Good afternoon, everyone. I am Vish Chaudhary, the project lead for South Asia for Advocates for International Development. I extend a very warm welcome to everybody who has joined us for this session. We've brought an excellent panel, but before I go to that, I will just introduce what we're going to talk about and say a little bit about Advocates for International Development, or A4ID as we are better known. Today, we will be speaking as part of the second India Pro Bono week on the impact of pro bono. And we will be looking at the impact of pro bono from a perspective of lessons and stories from Advocate for International Development's global case studies. I believe we all have a certain commitment to pro bono, and it is very important, if not essential, to make sure that we locate it within the context of the impact that it has on the lives that we touch. Therefore, we want to look at the case studies to not just assess the impact of pro bono, but also to celebrate the commitment as well as the contribution that all our partners make. For this session, we've got a number of panelists who will be walking you through what A4ID does, and we will be hearing from some of our partners, including on rule of law. So without further ado, I'm going to call in the first speakers for this session, which is Alice and Tom, who will be introducing themselves and the work that they do at Advocates for International Development. It's over to you, Alice and Tom.
Thank you very much, Vish, and hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this session. My name is Alice, and I am the PBLS team lead here at A4ID. I'm going to talk about who we are and what we do, and how you can sign up if you're interested in becoming a development partner with us. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tom, who's going to provide a little bit of information about some case studies about work we've achieved recently. I'm just going to share my screen and let's hope that the tech will work. Okay. Can everybody see my slides? I'm getting some nods from my fellow panelists, so I will continue. So firstly, just a little bit about our history. So A4ID is a charity with a vision to see the law and lawyers play their full part in the global eradication of poverty and advancing the UN SDGs. So we recognize that there is a gap between lawyers at law firms and NGOs who are carrying out development work directly, and we exist and aim to fill that gap. We were founded in 2006 after a group of lawyers sought to provide pro bono legal support to those impacted by the 2004 Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami. And since our establishment, we've helped to grow the legal pro bono sector across the globe. So we are a truly global charity. We work across the world. We have our central team in London, which is made up of the Royal UK team, PBLS, which is us, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And then we have our international consultants around the world, such as Vish, who's chairing this session, in India, Fiza in Pakistan, and Patrick in Kenya. We seek to be an authoritative voice of the legal community to both inspire and enable lawyers to join the global fight against poverty and to ensure that legal support is available for those engaged in that fight. So we're currently working hard to make this vision a reality. And yeah, that's a little bit more about our vision. So how do we work? We work with development partners who are non-profits advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. And the UN Sustainable Development Goals is a really important part of our charity values and our mission. And I'm going to talk about those a little bit later. So us at PBLS then, who are we? What does that mean? Well, PBLS stands for Pro Bono Legal Services Team. And we are essentially a brokerage service. So we work with our development partners, and those development partners are charities, NGOs, CSOs all around the world. And we partner them with legal partners So they can support, those lawyers can support on specific projects and offer pro bono legal assistance. So all of our work is pro bono, which is fantastic. So our development partners don't have to pay for our services, and they don't have to pay for the services and the advice and assistance from the work from our law firms either. So we are truly international. We currently work in over 150 jurisdictions, which is incredible. And that international aspect comes from our development partners and from our law firm partners. So our development partners are based around the world. Anybody can apply for assistance with us. And we're also very fortunate that our legal partners are based around the world too. And we partner with both international law firms who have offices all around the world. And we also partner with local law firms who are kind of local in specific countries and communities around the world. So our pro bono brokerage service, we cover all areas of law. So we cover corporate law, and this could be kind of mergers and acquisitions. We do corporate governance. So this could be, for example, if an NGO is seeking advice about different governing documents. We cover commercial law, commercial contract law, employment, that's very popular. So we cover things like employers of record, which is very, very popular, and different secondments. We do trademark and intellectual property, so anything to do with lots of websites recently, equal opportunities law, anti-discrimination, also any kind of land disputes. So particularly when we have projects where the development partners are, for example, we've had recently, they've been looking to open up or start some schools or some development projects, and there needs to be a contract over land use. We can handle that. We can deal with that too. Any tax issues, registration, and data protection too. So any transfer of data, storing of data. So all areas of law we cover, and we are very fortunate to have some incredible law firm partners. So Singh and Associates in India, we're very fortunate to partner with them, and many more globally too, such as DLA, Norton Rose Fulbright, Kirkland and Ellis, Latham and Watkins, Pinson and Masons, A&O Shearman, Millbank. I mean, there's too many to name. I'm just name dropping left, right, and centre. But we're very, very fortunate to be able to partner with so many incredible law firm partners. And that means that we bring really the highest quality pro bono assistance to our development partners, because it's the best law firms in the world that are partnering with us, and enables us to do hundreds of projects a year. So I'll explain a little bit about our process. So, as I say, any NGO, charity, civil service organisation can apply around the world for our assistance. And once they sign up with us, we'll carry out some due diligence checks. Those don't take very long. They're just checking where you're registered, the names of your trustees, the bank account governing documents, that kind of thing. Once a NGO has passed those due diligence checks, they will be onboarded as one of our development partners. And then we can have a discussion about the different legal requests, any unmet legal needs, and try and perform that brokerage element, and try and partner with a law firm who are able to assist. So the kind of key element of signing up with us is this Sustainable Development Goals. So we recognise that the UN Sustainable Development goes beyond just the eradication of poverty, because that's only one of the many UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so that's why we've created and we shape our framework around all of them. So that's part of our onboarding and our due diligence process too, is when the different NGOs, development partners sign up with us. We kind of look at the different UN Sustainable Development Goals that they're working towards and that their charity mission is contributing to. And also when we advertise and partner those projects with law firms, we are focusing on that UN Sustainable Development Goals element too, when we're thinking about the impact of the different projects and the different charitable missions and thinking about which UN Sustainable Development Goals it's associated with. We have two different streams of projects in the PBLS team that different development partners are welcome to register their interest and apply for us with. The first one is what we call our weekly projects. So those are more kind of short-term projects and areas of assistance. So this could be, for example, advice about an employment contract template. This could be advice about a merger. This could be advice, IP advice, in relation to a website or in relation to, an Instagram or a marketing campaign. Or this could be advice about registering as a new entity in a new jurisdiction. That one is incredibly popular. So those are kind of shorter term projects, and we can find legal assistance for those. And then the second stream are what we call strategic projects, and those are a little bit more longer term. So those could be covering advice about having data protection for all the different countries in a region. For example, if you've got different entities in different countries in Africa, you might be looking at your data protection for the whole of Africa region. And we would then break that down into a country by country project. That could also be, for example, dispute resolution. So you're potentially considering being engaged in a quite protracted dispute resolution process. You might need some advice around that. That's something that we can assist with. And because that has the potential to be a bit protracted, that's where we can assist. The most popular area of strategic projects that we offer is actually our research offering. So we've partnered with the World Bank, for example, to assist in gathering their research for the Women Business and Law Report. We've also partnered with a few various different organisations and professors from universities who are working towards presenting at COP, and they need different research areas from different countries and different lawyers to fill in different feedback forms and that kind of thing. So that's also an incredibly popular area, is asking for that research support from those qualified associates, and kind of having that knowledge gathering, which is also something we can assist with. So that's the kind of two different areas, our weekly projects and our strategic projects. We have an agreement with our law firms that all work will be provided by a partner, will be worked on by a partner, which is a really fantastic offering. And also all work is treated as paid work. So it's not kind of simmering to the bottom of the pile because it's pro bono. Absolutely not. It is treated as paid work, and you get the value of that advice as such. So that's a little bit about who we are at A4ID, and the PBLS team particularly. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Tom, who's also in our PBLS team, and he's going to talk through a few case studies. You can have kind of an in-depth example of our work.
Great, thank you, Alice. I will just also share my screen. Great, can everyone see my screen as well? Great, fantastic. Thank you. So I'm going to be sharing two of our global case studies of pro bono legal support in action. And the first case study will really demonstrate how pro bono legal support can help a vital project be protected through supporting organizations in navigating risk and overcoming operational barriers, essentially kind of safeguarding this vital work towards the sustainable development goals. And the second case study will demonstrate how pro bono legal support can unlock critical growth within organizations, particularly on the very urgent global goal of climate action. I want to thank our colleagues, colleague Christina and the comms department for writing up these case studies. And I want to give a huge thank you to our legal partners for making all of this work possible through valuing pro bono work and the impact that it can have towards the sustainable development goals. So the first case study is education focused, and it's kind of protecting, education work through pro bono legal support. And education nonprofits play a vital role in a very challenging environment. Often they're helping build state capacity to provide universal education. Often they're filling vital gaps especially in rural areas where children are not being granted their fundamental right to education, and education is a fundamental right established, of course, under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's SDG 4, quality education. And I know that in India as well, that it's a fundamental right grounded in Article 21A of the Constitution and the Right to Education Act of 2009. But the real challenge is how to kind of realize that in reality for all children, regardless of which country they're in, which part of the country they're in, regardless of the circumstances in which they grow up in. And also coming from a development background myself and having worked with an education nonprofit, there's so much you have to think about. There's, the curriculum, there's the learning processes, which, have to be updated in a digital world with, AI and mobile phones, equipment costs, reimbursing teachers, and often very small education nonprofits really rely on volunteers as well. So I want to just transport everyone over to South Africa, and in rural South Africa, only 80% of 9-year-olds cannot read for meaning, which means that they may be able to technically pronounce the words from reading it on a page, but they don't understand what those words mean. And in Toom Valley, schools often only have 1 to 2 teachers, so they're very understaffed, and these education projects are really, really vital for making sure that there isn't a kind of neglected and forgotten generation of children there. So TVS is an organization that supports 4 schools in the valley with maths, English, IT, teacher training, and literacy clubs. And so they help the children gain the vital skills that they need growing up, and they support pathways also into teaching careers. And of course, as an education project, it's having a huge impact for those children's lives, but it's also very vulnerable to any kind of disruption. A costly legal dispute with a third-party consultant threatened TVS's resources, risking staff salaries and these education services. So through our pro bono legal support service, which Alice just gave an overview of, we connected TVS with Jenna and Block, who provided pre-dispute legal advice, and it allowed them to avoid an expensive litigation which they just simply wouldn't have been able to afford. And so as a result of this, TVS recovered vital funds, enabling them to continue the education projects across the 4 schools, and to critically pay their South Africa-based project coordinator to keep the project going. So in terms of impact, everything kind of going forward from that project, Jenna and Block just provided organization saving support there, and they were really kind of grateful for that legal support. So I'll move on to the second case study. And the second case study is an organization called Just One Tree. And we're currently, of course, in a climate crisis, and the climate crisis is urgent. And despite everything we know about the need for climate action in 2023, 6.3 million hectares of forest was lost, and is threatening ecosystems and the ability to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals.
I'm having a terrible time. No, none of the people were joining. My link was bust. I had to.
Just heard a bit of sound there. So Just One Tree combats deforestation through tree planting, ocean regeneration, and climate education to help future generations continue this critical work and protect the ecosystem. And Just One Tree needed unrestricted corporate funding, but the legal deed restricted donation use. And as well, coming from a development background, unrestricted funding is really, really vital for nonprofits. It allows them to utilize funds in all sorts of creative ways and all sorts of impactful ways for the organization. So A4ID connected Just One Tree with Travis Smith, who redrafted their deed of gift to allow for this flexible funding. And as a result, Just One Tree is now scaling up its operations using this new deed, and expand and deepen its community impact. So essentially, how Travis Smith helped unlock all of that growth and all of that ability to expand, because there was a very specific legal hurdle that they had to overcome and were not able to without that. So yeah, that's the end of these case studies. So I'll hand back over to Vish now.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Alice, and thanks, Tom. That was very helpful. With this, I now move on to Ben and Shruti. Ben works as Senior Program Officer Strategic, and he is responsible for managing a portfolio of projects at Roll UK, which he will introduce. And we also have Shruti from Square Circle Clinic, who's done great work, great pro bono work on criminal justice as well as capital punishment. I will allow them to introduce themselves in a bit more detail. But with that, I pass it on to you, Ben.
Thank you so much, Vish. I will also just share my screen. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yes, we
Great.
can.
Thank you. So, real pleasure to be with you here today. Thank you very much for joining the session. As Vish says, I'm Senior Program Officer at A4ID, and I'm here today just to give a very brief introduction to the Rule of Law Expertise, or Roll UK program, before I hand back over to Vish to give some kind of more practical examples of the work. So the Roll UK program has been delivered by A4ID, implemented by A4ID for a number of years. We're currently in the third year of this current 5-year cycle. It's funded by the UK government through the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. And its goal is really around improving rule of law, of course, specifically improving rule of law and poverty reduction goals by supporting long-term and strategic peer-to-peer interventions between UK legal stakeholders and rule of law actors in ODA, official development assistance eligible countries. And we do that again through the deployment of legal and judicial expertise on a pro bono basis. The types of activities that we deliver through the program often include, for example, training and capacity building for partners in developing countries, maybe legislative review, development and consultation, could be targeted research or learning exchanges, scoping visits, needs assessments, or the development of practical resources to support rule of law. In terms of the criteria for support through the program, we have kind of 4 key principles. So first of all, it must be a partnership between a UK organisation and an in-country organisation, development partner in a developing country. Also must draw on UK legal pro bono expertise. Must be demand-led, by which we of course mean really led by and driven by the needs of our partners in the jurisdiction in which we're working. And of course, lastly, must address a rule of law challenge. And I'll just touch very briefly on the 3 models of delivery, or the three strands to the program. So the partnership model, something we call the strategic response hub, and strategic legal reform. So the partnership model is the largest by volume area of the program in terms of the number of projects and activities we deliver. And this is really fairly broad, but about the deployment, mobilization of pro bono legal or judicial expertise to achieve a specific rule of law impact. This might be activities aimed at strengthening the partnership itself, such as, for example, scoping visits and other partnership activities, also covering knowledge, learning, and coordination activities. The second mode of delivery, or the second strand of the program, is something we call the Strategic Response Hub. And this is very similar, but this is really about strategic one-off opportunities identified and requested by known stakeholders such as FCDO, local posts and country offices. And in these cases, the partnership element of the assignments may not be between a UK and an in-country organisation, but between an FCDO, local country office, or another partner as appropriate. And again, deploying the input of UK, the strategic input of UK legal expertise, again provided pro bono. So as I've said, really about FCDO, high commissions, embassies, and other in-country posts requesting support around a specific rule of law issue in their jurisdiction that they'd like to work with us on. And finally, strategic legal reform. So this third strand of the program is really about spearheading strategic alliances to work on a defined legal reform or policy change in a key jurisdiction and around a key rule of law theme. So to give a few examples, we do a lot of work in this area around freedom of religion and belief, to provide assistance on FORB-related legislation via direct requests from FCDO, to influence areas such as legislation reform and review, again, working to capacity build local community support organisations or state agencies. Under this strand, we also do a lot of work around international humanitarian law and war crimes. And our CASA project focuses on illegal wildlife trade in the CASA region of Southern Africa, covering areas of Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. So as I said, that was really just a very kind of brief whistle-stop tour of the program itself. But I'll hand back over to Vish to talk through some more specific practical examples.
Thanks very much, Ben. That was very useful. And now we come to you, Shruti, to speak about the partnership that we've had with you, and also to highlight a little bit more on the case studies, if you could.
Thank you, Vish. Hi, everyone. I'm Shruti, and I work at the Square Circle Clinic, which is a criminal justice initiative based out of Nalsar in Hyderabad. We provide pro bono legal representation to prisoners sentenced to death at the Supreme Court in India, at different high courts, and some trial courts. We also work on issues of wrongful conviction, prevention of torture, research on sentencing, mental health, and prisons. So our rule of law primarily works on three verticals: our litigation and mitigation work, forensics work, and our mental health work. So as part of our legal representation work, we provide pro bono legal representation to prisoners sentenced to death across the country. Most of the cases that the Square Circle Clinic does is at the appellate stage. And our representation work is very unique in the sense that we try to ensure that the clients and the families are updated on what's happening at every stage of the case. And this is important to highlight because one of our first ever reports, the Death Penalty India report that came out, one of the things that it documented was that clients were not even aware of where their case was. The lawyers had never met them. They had no way of having like a sustained way of contacting their lawyers. So we made sure that we either visit our clients or speak to them regularly to make sure that they know what's happening in their cases. Since these are quite high profile cases, death sentence cases, we routinely encounter issues such as wrongful conviction based on shoddy police investigation, unreliable forensic evidence, and other such issues that we routinely raise when we argue the conviction in these cases at the Supreme Court. An important part of our litigation work is our mitigation practice. Now, mitigation is in its quite nascent stages in India because the courts have started giving access to social workers, psychologists, and other social scientists to go and meet these prisoners on death row only in 2022. Before that, there was no formal access that was provided. So often the mitigation investigators on the team had to give their questions to the lawyers who would go and ask the client these questions and bring back information. So since 2022, we've had this kind of access where we can go and conduct detailed interviews with our clients and submit reports to the court. It was like I said, it was in 2022 that the court laid down some kind of procedural guidelines for on what aspects of a person's life that one needs to look at before taking a decision on their sentencing. The challenge that we currently see is that although this has become a procedure at the Supreme Court where routinely such reports are being called for, it's not necessarily trickling down to the lower courts in the country. Currently, we have more than 500 people on death row in India. This year, more than 100 people have been sentenced to death, but these mitigation reports were called for in less than 4 cases out of these hundreds. So we see almost like an opposite trend where at the appellate court, we've not had any death sentence confirmation in more than 2 years. And at the lower courts, there's more and more death sentences being awarded every day. And they aren't necessarily following the guidelines that the top court has laid down. This becomes all the more important because recently, a couple of months ago, the Supreme Court in one of our cases has actually held that these procedures are part of the constitutional guarantee for a fair trial. So this is a massive development in the death penalty jurisprudence, especially with respect to sentencing, because it institutionalizes mitigation as a fair trial right. But like I said, the practice on the ground remains very inconsistent, and there is also a lack of skilled mitigation professionals. So part of our work with A4ID has been to conduct trainings and workshops to train social scientists across the country to be able to get them to do mitigation work, because as there is more and more judicial recognition and engagement with mitigating information, there will also be a need for more and more people who are trained in it. Currently, in a country where there are more than 500 people on death row, it's just 5 people at the Square Circle Clinic who are doing the mitigation work. So the idea is to expand on that cohort so that more of us can be engaged in capital sentencing work. The second area of intervention is our forensic work. We have seen through our forensics work how courts and the legislature are increasingly demanding scientific evidence, but there are no standards of admissibility or quality of these evidence. What this necessarily means is that even unreliable and junk science is admitted. One example of that is bite mark. Bite mark is routinely taken as scientific evidence in court, while we do not have enough scientific literature to support that claim. And reports are often treated as very conclusive facts rather than just expert opinions, which requires more interrogation by the courts. There is also a failure to insist on cross-examination of the forensic experts or providing underlying documents to these reports. So those were some of the issues that our Forensic Science India report had highlighted, that there's also issues on part of the system where there's poor infrastructure, lack of accreditation, absence of independent oversight of these labs, raising both concerns of reliability and accountability when it comes to forensics, user forensics in these cases. With our intervention through our legal representation work, we've been able to get about 6 of our death sentences remanded back for a retrial based on lack of reliable forensic evidence. And some of these cases eventually led to an acquittal of this person after they'd spent years on death row. And so conducting regular trainings and seminars for lawyers to train them on basic concepts of DNA and forensics, which will ensure that there is lesser number of wrongful convictions, and it also strengthens the due process rights that are often neglected in these cases. And in the long run, of course, it ensures transparency and accountability in the system. So yeah, those are two broad spectrums of work where we've been working with A4ID on rule of law issues. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Shri. That was very helpful and also very good to hear about the different strands that you've picked together in terms of the work that you're doing. Very briefly, just to mention the impact and the reason why we're really talking about case studies is because at A4ID we obviously, as you would have heard so far, take impact very seriously, and there are some sort of non-negotiables as far as impact is concerned. The first is that, of course, it needs to be measured. Stories need to be told, and it needs to be measured not just in terms of what numbers tell you, but also in terms of stories, as you would have heard from PBLS as well as from the Role UK team and Shruti. The second is that we also make sure that the importance of context is never forgotten whenever we are looking at the impact and whenever we are looking at the case studies to ensure that we continue to be at top of understanding the change and the differences that we've made. And perhaps most importantly, in order to make sure that we ourselves remain very receptive to the feedback that we receive, as well as the challenges that we face, etc., so on and so forth. Which means it's really important that we continue to measure impact and to hear stories like we've just been told. I must congratulate all the panelists for sticking to time, which is extremely impressive. And now we come to what I think is the more exciting part of our session. And I will just pick out a few questions, and then I will pass them on to each one of you in no particular order. I think the first question, and a very good one at that, because we are celebrating India Pro Bono Week, is what is the difference between legal aid and pro bono? And in India, it seems to be that legal aid is usually spoken about more than about pro bono. So I think this question, I am going to direct it to you, Shruti, to give the differences between legal aid and pro bono and how in India it's sometimes spoken about.
Yeah, I know it's often spoken about interchangeably, but it's important to. So, legal aid is usually used for state provided legal assistance. And pro bono can be both. Pro bono is usually private pro bono, which is when private lawyers take up these cases. And don't private lawyers or institutions would take up these cases without charging the client. Yeah, legal aid would be for the state. We are not state. We are private. We provide private legal representation, but we do it pro bono. We do it without any costs for the client. Yeah.
Okay, and I think, yeah, absolutely. Just to also using the Indian context, I think the understanding also is that legal aid is something that's usually, you're right, and pro bono is something that we are trying to do in a more structured way as well. Did any of the other panelists want to add to that definition of legal aid versus pro bono, or what the status is in India? No. All right. We've got one other question. Can the panel give some examples of opportunities to do pro bono in India? And I think again, I will look towards you, Shruti, and then I'll come to the other panelists who, of course, would have dealt with our legal partners in country.
I mean, I can talk about the way in which some of the ways in which we engage in pro bono work. One is, of course, the core of our work is legal representation. So we do take up these cases and do not charge our client to do these cases, and we do it across Supreme Court, High Court, and we have some cases that are at the trial stage. How do you expand on this? I mean, if you're somebody who's working at this trial stage, and there are organizations like ours. Uh, in fact, there are organizations that do more trial work who constantly need people who are working in those courts. So one can reach out to them. In fact, since our office is in Delhi, we are unable to sort of, and for trial work, one needs to position themselves in local, in those particular cities and courts, because there will be certain practices that are unique to those courts. We don't do a lot of trial work, but we constantly look to find people who can help us with doing that. We also have something called a letter writing program where we constantly which runs throughout the year. Every year we hire professionals or students who are interested in helping us write letters to clients in vernacular languages across the country. Of course, it's not pro bono. There is a certain pay that we have for each letter. But yeah, so it is also something that we do as part of our legal representation work. Yeah, so that's some ways in which Square Circle Clinic does pro bono, but I'm sure there are other organizations that are constantly looking to are looking for lawyers who can assist them with different things. Yeah, maybe Vish or yeah, other panelists can add to it. Yeah.
Would the panelists like to add to Alice? I think I saw you nodding. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. There's lots of opportunities to get involved in pro bono work in India through us. So lots of our development partners kind of request either those short-term projects that I was talking about or longer-term projects. Some examples of some shorter term projects. I can't name organizations, but I'll just talk about kind of generally their projects. Have been registering in India, for example, if they have an entity or an office elsewhere and they want to set up an entity in India, giving them some advice about how to do that. Also, we've given advice to development partners about about data protection after the new digital personal protection rules, and some DPs wanted advice around that. And then also another example is an organization that kind of deals and helps with supply chain and different supply chains of textiles and clothes that are being shipped internationally, but largely from India to the UK. And they wanted advice around the free trade agreement and impacts if any of their clothes and textiles were stopped at the UK border. So yeah, lots of different examples of ways to get involved.
Thanks very much. Anybody else did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to add, our development partners and development organizations want to be compliant in the law, and there's a lot of issues globally, and I know India is also kind of development organizations in India are also impacted this in terms of international money movements, for organizations to secure the funds that they need. It's quite common for development partners to come and say, how can we be compliant with this, especially with entities across different jurisdictions. So, obviously the Section 8 in India and, receiving international transfers can be tricky. That's true in many countries. And organizations want to be compliant with that.
Thanks very much. We've got a related question, and I think I'm going to start with PBLS on this. Is what are the biggest challenges for pro bono in India and globally? And perhaps we could start with the global side, and then we could narrow it down to India. So over to you. Maybe we could begin with Tom this time.
Sure. I mean, I think one challenge is that in many parts of the world, pro bono culture is still quite young, and it's growing. And I think that's something that Alice and Vish will be able to talk more about. And we work really hard to place projects in jurisdictions where people would not expect to be able to find pro bono support. And we have numerous examples of being able to do that, but it very much relies on the development of the sector and how much pro bono is valued. So I think to kind of start off, that is one of the challenges. And then also I think just the global kind of political environment as well, global changes, geopolitical changes, impacting, how much law firms are kind of looking at this. But that would just be kind of what I could add. But...
Great. Alice?
Yeah, I think I completely agree. And to add to what Tom said, I think if you're talking about kind of globally, then with the difference with the focus in India, I think definitely a main thing to think about is that culture. I think definitely in Europe and America, because there is more of a history of pro bono, it's kind of embedded into the framework of the law firms themselves. So they have hours that they offer to associates that's kind of set in their calendar to work on pro bono projects, because they see the value and it's kind of embedded in the ethos of their firm. Whereas in India, it's definitely starting, which is incredible, but it's just not as established. So I think that's something that we at A4ID are trying to contribute to, is that shift and in that recognition of the value of pro bono, and that it provides those, opportunities, for example, to train younger associates, but also the biggest, most important factor is the impact that it has. It's helping those charities that are making a difference on the front line. And so kind of focusing on the value and the impact and then the opportunity, it kind of presents it as a win-win, and helping firms navigate how to build in that framework when at a time we understand it's complicated for law firms as well, because they're kind of competing against their paid work. So it's just building that framework is, I would say, yeah, one of the main challenges.
Thanks very much. Ben, did you want to add anything to it?
Uh, Very much echo those comments, and I would also add probably the the challenge of funding and really just the scope of and scale of the work and the need and the potential and the opportunities as well that are out there. When you're talking about rule of law and you're talking about sustainable development, that's a very broad picture, and I think yeah, it's pretty much at the moment everywhere we look we're seeing need and opportunity that is, you kind of want to run after, but actually how do we do that in the most effective way? How do we do that in partnership? How do we do that sustainably and long term? So I think kind of, yeah, balancing that scope of the opportunity and scale of the opportunity with the resources we've got.
Perfect. And Shruti?
Yeah, no, I think most of it has been covered by other panelists, but just I want to add that a lot of early career lawyers and advocates also struggle with financial security. Taking pro bono cases means that loss of income, then there's travel costs that is involved to courts, there's investment of that kind of time, and especially with criminal cases that can go on for like a really, really long time. It means that you end up investing that kind of time over a number of years. And there's also like limited infrastructural support in terms of the few organizations that are doing criminal justice pro bono work have to constantly think about how to fund their work. Yeah, just do those two things. Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay, one interesting question, which I'm going to plug in the next session as well, which is what are the benefits to lawyers in doing pro bono? Whoever's asked this, may I suggest you attend one of the sessions that we've planned in India Pro Bono Week as well on this. But very quickly, from your experiences, and this time I will start with you, Tom, and then I'll go around with the panelists. So, why should lawyers do pro bono? Just very quickly, I know we could all write thesis on this.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a development background, so the world of lawyers and the law has been fairly new to me. But it's a question that I'm often asked by development partners. Often when it comes to pro bono, development partners can sometimes say, well, okay, so it's free. So what's the catch? So part of it is showing these incentives that law firms and lawyers have. So I think a lot of it is about the positive impact on the sustainable development goals. Could be areas where individual lawyers or law firms are particularly passionate about a particular cause, or being in solidarity with a particular group, or kind of seeing the way that certain global issues such as climate change, you know, threaten us globally. And I know that when it comes to um, when it comes to weather patterns impacted by climate change, I know that kind of the South Asia region has been kind of consistently and really severely affected by it. So obviously there'll be the individual motivations of the lawyers and the law firms, but also it helps generate investment in firms, particularly on the global level. There is an element in which people's interests are aligned, and for the law firm, it can mean critical investment, where an investor wants to see work towards those environmental governance and kind of social goals.
Thank you very much, Ellis.
Yeah, thanks, Vish. As you say, we could talk about this at length, but I'll keep it short. I think first and foremost, access to really interesting, complicated, rare cases, and projects that wouldn't have been available through paid work, quite simply. So there is so much happening that's innovative in the developing world. And those innovative projects bring about innovative and interesting legal questions. And those questions are really new, particularly, at kind of the intersection of technology and energy now. And those lawyers wouldn't have had the opportunity to work on those if they were paid cases. So that's the most important selling point, I would say. Secondly, it provides really good training opportunities for young lawyers and associates, because they, wouldn't have had access to be able to work on these cases. And it provides a good training ground because it's pro bono. Also, improving access to justice worldwide. I mean, that's something that we can all agree is incredibly important, and it's a way that lawyers can give back. Being kind of fostering relationships with those different charities and those CSOs. Also, from a business perspective, fostering partnerships with different law firms. Because on our kind of larger strategic projects, we have multiple law firms who are working sometimes on one project, and that provides an opportunity for kind of a strategic partnership that wouldn't have been possible in a business world. So those, I would say, are kind of the top reasons.
That's very impressively summarized. Thanks very much, Alice. Shruti?
No, I think most of it has been covered by the other panelists. So, yeah.
Great. And Ben, did you want to add anything?
I think completely agree with everything that's been said, and I suppose the idealist in me says, the opportunity to change the world sustainably. I think if you look at the UK charitable sector and the international development sector, the kind of work that's delivered, a lot of it, it doesn't involve lawyers and doesn't involve that kind of more that real sustainable long-term change, which is so important to the work that we do. So I think lawyers need to be a much bigger part of the picture in delivering this kind of work.
Great. So I think there might be a few other questions, but everybody who's missed out on anybody in case has missed out, the panelists will certainly be available. I'm going to take the next maybe maximum 30 seconds to just have a rapid fire round. So whatever word comes to your mind, and I will be going alphabetically. So it's going to be Alice, Ben, Shruti, and then Tom. Okay, are you ready? 2 seconds to respond. All right, Alice, we start with you. What does pro bono mean to you? One word. Any one word. Okay, I'm going to come back to you, Alice. So
This is so hard. One word.
yes, it is. I think that's the hardest part of it. Ben, would you would you have any one word handy?
I'll go with partnership. I think that's kind of a real
Excellent.
key. Yeah, partnership.
Shruti?
It's very difficult, but I was just thinking, gives you a better understanding of social context, like doing pro bono work. Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Yep. Tom?
I'd say unlocking
Oh,
brackets the
excellent.
potential of organizations and impact, but unlocking, I think,
Excellent.
is.
Alice?
I was going to say impact.
Okay, great. We could live with that. I think we're almost out of time. Just before we end, it was really, really encouraging to see us talking about pro bono and this being the second year. We will make this a regular feature. So first of all, I'd like to begin by thanking all the amazing, wonderful panelists and who I did also put on the spot. So thank you very much for joining. A big round of applause to you. Thank you also to our partners, including Trust Law and our development partners, including Square Circle Clinic. Thanks very much for all the continued support. Thanks also to everybody who has taken out the time. I understand it is a, a Monday evening and you've still taken the time out. And whilst I have your attention, I've just posted a link in the chat function. We've been talking about impact. So that link really is a feedback survey for this particular session. And we would really love to hear from you to see what you would like to hear us do in the future. From A4ID's perspective and from everybody's, including all our partners, thank you very much for joining. We've kicked off the Pro Bono week today. This is the second edition. And as earlier, our CEO Yasmin said, together and with Pro Bono, we can move mountains. And I think it's never been a better time, never been a better chance, never been a better place to do Pro Bono. So I look forward to seeing many of you in the coming few days. Thank you very much for attending this session, and do not forget to fill in the feedback form. With that, have a good evening and a good afternoon.